going on, everybody? This is Mike Hughes, and you are listening to the Shy Kid podcast presented by Give Us a Shot's very own. I fucked that up. But presented by iHeartRadio's very own Give Us a Shot network. I knew it. The second I said it, I knew it. But that's all right. It's our first show in a couple of weeks. Really excited about it. We got Dylan in the chat. Yo, Dylan. Appreciate you being here. Dylan hopped in from the TikTok live all the way to the Give Us a Shot network. So make sure you check us out if you haven't already. Dylan, we appreciate the subscription. We appreciate you being here, brother. And let me tell you something right now. That is the sickest logo I have ever seen for a profile picture. I definitely need to get one of those as a hoodie because I think they are super clean. I always see them like in the oddest of places. Like I never see them officially bought or like in stores. I always see them like at the mall or something, and then it disappears and I never see it again, and I regret not buying it. But regardless, it's super sick. It's super dope. But man, there's a lot of stuff going around in the league right now. Corbin Burns signs over a $200 million deal over the next 6 years with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Brother, like, why? You know what I mean? Like, if he would have signed with the Dodgers, I would have been like, that makes sense. If he would have signed with the Padres, that makes sense. You know, you want to go to the Yankees or the Mets, that makes sense. Yeah. The Diamondbacks, you're just like, here's what's going to happen. The Arizona Diamondbacks are going to be a wild card team or miss the playoffs, but every single time the Cubs faced him during that time in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization, we're going to lose every single one of those games. And we'll probably miss the playoffs by 2 or 3 games, and we'll look back on it and realize it's because we didn't get Corbin Burns. That's just me being dramatic. But the reality is, we got a lot of free agents flying off the shelves. Max Fried, gone. You got guys like, who else is available, right? Or who else was taken right now? Name some free agents for me, chat, because we got so many guys that are just off the books, especially from a starting pitching perspective. Corbin Burns reported 6-year deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Blake Snell, 5-year deal with the Dodgers. Max Fried, 8-year deal with the New York Yankees. Nathan signed a 3-year deal with the Rangers. I mean, we got guys all over. Sean Manaea is back with the New York Mets. Shane Bieber signed a 1-year deal with Cleveland. Alex Cobb, 1-year deal. A lot of guys. Luis Severino, 2-year deal with the Athletics. I think, I don't even know any Athletic fans. Frankie Montas, 2-year deal with the Mets. We got a lot of guys flying off the shelves. Obviously, Kyle Hendricks, our professor himself, is signed with the Anaheim Angels. But nonetheless, man, we still got a few guys left in free agency that we could tip off or we could talk about. I don't really know what direction the team is going to go into. Now, earlier today, we did finally get the 305-312 deal we were waiting for. Unfortunately, it wasn't with Luzardo. Jorge Luzardo ended up going to, where did Luzardo end up going to? The Phillies, if I'm not mistaken. He went to the Phillies for their top shortstop prospect, if I'm not mistaken. Night Isaac, appreciate you being here, brother. But yeah, we got Luzardo going to the Phillies. We got a lot of guys making moves. The big thing for me is really just figuring out what the Cubs want to do. And when you have guys like Corbin Burns and Blake Snell finally falling, those big pieces, I think you're going to start seeing the smaller pieces start to trickle out. Like there's still the Jack Flaherty's, the Roki Sasaki's, the Verlanders of the world. There's still the Jose Quintanas as well, the Michael Lorenzos. You know, there's a lot of Lorenzen, pardon me. There's a lot of guys still available right now. Somebody that I think the Cubs could definitely benefit from getting is Michael Lorenzen. And I think what we were able to see him do, especially in the Cincinnati Reds organization, he is somebody that I'm a huge fan of. I remember, if anybody remembers, when pitchers still hit, he hit his first home run after his father's passing when he had his dad's favorite song playing as his walk-up song. And ever since then, I've been following him. And, to see what he's been able to do over the last couple of years, only 33 years of age, I definitely think he's somebody that the Cubs could go after right now, and he could be a big piece of both this rotation and this bullpen, depending on how they want to use him. And you got guys like Matthew Boyd as well. You can kind of fluctuate that and kind of change it and manipulate it however way you want from a matchup perspective. So, Michael Lorenzen is definitely somebody interested that I think the Cubs should be interested in. Alex Cobb obviously is off the books, but the Jose Quintana reunion and Max Scherzer, 40 years of age. Should the Cubs bring in Max Scherzer? I don't know. Like there's a lot of guys that I think right now that the Cubs could go after in not a lot of time. I think this is going to happen relatively quickly. When you got guys like Verlander and Scherzer available, that's great. But when you realize they're 42 and 40 years old coming off of injuries, it kind of just it bursts your bubble just a little bit because it's going to be a lot harder to really get quality innings out of some of these guys. Yeah, and Dylan even brings up Crochet was also traded to the Boston Red Sox. We got a lot of guys really just getting moved around, and the Cubs don't really seem to want to do that. And we kind of talked about it earlier about our expectations for this rotation going into 2024 or 2025. Sorry. And Dylan asked a perfect question. What are your Matt Boyd expectations or predictions? For me, I think Matt Boyd is going to be similarly used to a Tyler Chatwood, and I hope nobody takes that the wrong way. I think he'll start off as a starter. I think he'll kind of work his way into the rotation in the bottom end, but I think he'll become a bullpen guy. I really don't see him being a long-term answer in the starting rotation, especially with guys like Ben Brown and Cade Horton and Brandon Birdsell in the farm system just waiting for an opportunity. You also have the I don't believe we have. Do we still have Caleb Killian? I think maybe. I don't know. But regardless, I think we got a lot of starters that are potentially trying to get an opportunity to really get to where we want to be. And I don't think Matthew Boyd in the long run is going to be that answer. Now, could I be wrong? And do I hope I'm wrong? Sure. This is a guy with a 2 point something or 3 something ERA in 2024. Obviously, he didn't play a lot of games. Signed later on with the Guardians, but that is what it is. It's 2025 now. Hopefully he gets a full spring training under his belt. He gets used to with guys like Hottovy and company. So I'm excited. I'm excited to say that Matthew Boyd will probably be a good addition for the Chicago Cubs. But what I will say is this. I don't think we should count out the Cubs in making another trade. Now, obviously, earlier today, like I said, 305 and the 312 finally got a deal done. It wasn't Jorge Alfaro. It wasn't Jorge Luzardo. It was Matt Mervis and cash considerations for Vidal Burham. Yeah, Vidal Burham. Former top 3 prospect in 2021 next to Michael Bush and Nick Madrigal. So obviously you kind of look at that and you understand. And I believe Chase Strumpf was also in that as well. But Matt Mervis leaving the Chicago Cubs organization, definitely unfortunate. We've had him on the show and on the podcast before, on Mike on the Mic, before it was the Shy Kid. And, he's an amazing human being and an amazing person. It's really unfortunate to lose a guy like Merv because I feel like, one, he just didn't get real opportunity. And what I mean by that is really setting him up for success. Where guys like James Triantos and Owen Casey are fully ready to become a part of this organization. They still keep them down in AAA to really just wait it out and make sure that they're as ready as possible. They're more than ready for the majors. Whereas Matt Mervis, in a span of 365 days, went from single A, double A, triple A, and then to the majors. So, and I understand Eric Hosmer and Trey Mancini and guys like Frank Schwindel were our first baseman prior to that. But you never really gave him an opportunity to flourish. I feel like David Ross didn't really give him an opportunity, and they definitely rushed him. So I wish him the best. I wish Matt nothing but the best. I texted him earlier today, and told him that he could be that guy. He could be Mash Mervis in the 305, and I think he's going to get everyday opportunity to be able to do that. So yeah, I wish him nothing but the best of luck. What an amazing human being. What a great guy. Didn't have to come on my show a couple of years ago when I just started out, and he took a shot on me, and I appreciate him. But the Cubs definitely, you can't walk out of this offseason with just Kyle Tucker being your only real trade move. Obviously Matthew Boyd as well, but I don't know. I feel like there's a big move in place for the Chicago Cubs. And Dylan kind of brings up the next conversation I was going to talk about. How do you feel if Matt Shaw is our opening day third baseman and Yoan Moncada is our backup? I don't hate the idea of Yoan Moncada on the Cubs, but I hate it for the simple fact that I don't think it does anything for Yoan Moncada. Like, Yoan Moncada is trying to prove that he still belongs as a starting third baseman in Major League Baseball. Like, he has had some of the most unlucky injuries and some of the worst at-bats we have seen in Chicago over the last few years. And that's saying something. Yoan Moncada was one of the most higher thought of prospects in all of baseball at one point, way back in 2015, 2016, prior to them trading for Chris Sale. Obviously, the Boston Red Sox knew what they were doing. They ended up winning a World Series, and Chris Sale is a Hall of Famer. But Yoan Moncada had that kind of hype. I would love Yoan Moncada on the Cubs, but I just I don't think it makes a lot of sense for him. I think right now he's going to look for a prove-it deal similar to Cody Bellinger of 2022, 2023, where it's probably just a one-year deal, and as long as he's playing every day, he's just going to bet on himself. And that's really where I'm at. Like, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for him to come here and play behind Matt Shaw just in case Matt Shaw doesn't work out or isn't an immediate impact. You know, and that's just my personal opinion. If you guys feel differently, that's perfectly fine. Isaac Paredes is one of those guys as well, where it was like you have Matt Shaw here. Matt Shaw is one of the best prospects in baseball at third base. You're not going to sit him behind Isaac Paredes, so you got to move him eventually. Um, and Isaac wasn't going to sit behind him either because Isaac is still a very productive third baseman as well. I guess now he's a first baseman. I don't even know what they're going to do with him over there. But yeah, no, I'm really excited about it. But I don't love that at all for Yohan Moncada. I definitely think he should go somewhere. Where is somewhere he could go? Who's the third baseman of the Oakland A's? While we're talking about the A's, if you could see Brent Brooker, Lawrence Butler, and Yohan Moncada, I think you got something nice. You got something nice stirring up. If they can all stay healthy, you got something nice. Um, yeah, no, for sure. Rafael Devers from Boston Red Sox, he's a pretty good player. I mean, yeah, he's a very good player, Omar. I just don't with the way the Boston Red Sox are operating right now, getting guys like Garrett, getting guys like Walker, I don't see them moving him whatsoever. I think they're in a win now mode, especially because they were like sneakily good in 2024. They also had some horrible stretches. They were the Boston Red Sox. All right, if we're gonna be completely honest, the Cubs are closer to the Red Sox than the Brewers right now. And what I mean by that is like from 2024 standpoint, I think the Cubs are closer to the Red Sox in terms of hey, they'll win some big games and they'll lose a lot of really bad games. But where the Brewers are just consistently night in and night out, you know, we're going to win the games we should and we're going to compete in the games that give us a hard time. I just don't see the Cubs being that division winner quite yet. Kyle Tucker's cool, don't get it twisted, but if we're going to be completely honest, Kyle Tucker coming to the Chicago Cubs is your Cody Bellinger replacement because Cody in 2023 batted 300, 25 plus home runs, Gold Glove defense. So like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like Kyle Tucker is a superstar caliber player, but Kyle Tucker's just not going to walk in here and completely change the bottom half of this lineup when he's batting third or fourth. You know what I mean? Like that's just it's just what it is. Dylan says, say Jed signs one more starting pitcher and left-handed reliever, would you consider this a successful offseason? See, that's the difference. That's where I'm always going to come back to the middleman ground. You know, like just because we don't get a Juan Soto or get a Yamamoto or a Shohei Ohtani doesn't mean it wasn't a successful offseason. If by Dylan's logic, the Chicago Cubs sign a couple more free agents, you bring in Matthew Boyd, you bring in Kyle Tucker, you have guys like Matt Shaw and Owen Casey just waiting for opportunity. That's the big key right there. Because a lot of people think the Cubs haven't done enough, but if the Cubs believe that Matt Shaw and Owen Casey are going to be immediate impacts, those are two huge free agent signings. You know what I mean? Like if let's say for sake of argument, if either Matt Shaw or Owen Casey have a rookie of the year candidacy type of year, I mean the lineup looks completely different. You know what I mean? And I think that's really the big idea. What does Matt Shaw, if Matt Shaw has a Chris Bryant-esque rookie year, how differently do you look at this lineup? This lineup changes a lot. This lineup changes from a very top-heavy order to you could spread out guys a little bit. And if Owen Casey has an average rookie year, or say he even pops off and he's above average to a rookie of the year candidate, then you're looking at two guys who are making an immediate impact for this organization without having to pay them anything. You know what I mean? Like, and I understand that's wishful thinking. Some guys are going to work out, some guys aren't. These guys could come up. They could be like Brennan Davis and get hurt. They could be like Matt Mervis and need more time. You really have no idea. Or like a PCA where maybe the first half they struggle and the second half they kind of start putting it together. But if they figure it out by the end of the season and we're a playoff caliber team, it's a completely different conversation. That's a completely different ball game. You know what I mean? And I think that's where I'm very optimistic in the moves the Chicago Cubs are making. So for me, the moves I've seen the Cubs make thus far, I think you look at it and you say, if you're going into 2025 and the Chicago Cubs have, let me move this real quick because I think I'm too loud right now. If you're going into 2025 and the Chicago Cubs have Matthew Boyd, Kyle Tucker, Roki Sasaki, let's say for shits and giggles, Roki Sasaki, Matt Shaw, and Owen Casey, and then you bring in another reliever, I think that's a very, very successful offseason. I really do. Which players do you think will break out this season for the Cubs? I think PCA and Bush take a big step forward. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Michael Bush will have a gold glove caliber year. I think what he was able to do in his first year at first base was very, very productive. Pete Crow Armstrong, another guy, and that goes without saying, a gold glove caliber center fielder. What I want to see from PCA is really, and I know this is like, there's so much that goes into it. There's WCR plus, there's his slugging, there's his OPP, there's OPS, everything. I really just want to see the average go up. I really just want to see him be a guy, a 260 to 270 bat, maybe 250, 270. I don't think that's too much to ask. Um, and just steal some bags, brother. Just steal some bags and play some D, And I think that's really where I'm at with P. Crow Armstrong. Somebody that I really think can take that next step. Oh, that's a tough one. Because I think Dylan, you hit it on the head. I think those two are huge candidates. But somebody that we could just like have a conversation about. I think Dansby is who he is. Like I think that's where a lot of people get it twisted. Let's actually look that up because I'm really curious. Four big shortstops, 2022s. Corey Seager. Yeah, I want to check this out really quick. Contracts. Okay, so we had Carlos Correa who signed with both the Mets and the Giants, and then ended up ultimately being on the Twins. That one, remember that I'll never forget that one. That one was still so weird to me. Then you have Xander Bogaerts, who they're currently shopping. You have, what was it, Trey Turner or was it Corey Seager? It was one of them. And then you have Dansby Swanson. For me, brother, I think the conversation is out of those four shortstops, did Dansby Swanson end up being a top two shortstop? I think he did. It was Trey. Yeah. So out of Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson, and who was the other one? Carlos Correa. Out of all four of them, is Dansby Swanson at least top two? Now he, if I'm not mistaken, got paid the least. He got 182 million dollars, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Dansby has proven that he's top two. I think for me, it really comes down to production and it really comes down to consistency. Xander Bogaerts has struggled a lot at times. Carlos Correa has been pretty solid. Um, Trey Turner had a really hard start, but he's really picked it up. But Dansby Swanson, that's where I feel like a lot of people misunderstand who Dansby is. Dansby Swanson is an amazing shortstop. But that's what he is. He's an amazing shortstop. Dansby Swanson has never been an insane hitter. Dansby Swanson has never been one of those guys that's going to be top three in a championship caliber lineup. He's not in your top order. And I think he can definitely be very productive. I've seen him myself hit 4 or 5 home runs in 2024. I don't know why I was at every good Dansby Swanson game. But I think Dansby Swanson's going to live up to his contract. And I think he's going to live up to it just strictly based off the fact that his defense is going to remain elite for years to come, barring injury. And I think he is going to live up to that just strictly off of that. And if he could bat anywhere from 240 to 260, $182 million is really chump change for what he's providing you in the field every single day. So I definitely think he lives up to the deal. Obviously, Dansby's never going to be a 30 home run guy, 100 RBI guy. He's not. You know what I mean? And I think anybody who expected him to be that is just you don't know Dansby Swanson's game. That's not who he is. So when it comes to the contract with the Chicago Cubs, I definitely do think he lives up to it. I don't think that's a contract we look back on like the Jason Hayward deal and say, man, we whiffed on that one. Like Dansby was who he was then. He's the same player he is now. And they won a World Series in Atlanta with Dansby Swanson as the starting shortstop. So it's definitely possible if you surround him around the right offenses. Dylan says to keep it on Swanson. Do you think Swanson will have an improvement offensively next season, especially with consistency, either starts cold or ends cold? I think that's where you can realistically have a conversation about Dansby Swanson. I think for me, really just consistent at bats. Consistent at bats. Don't chase. The K rate needs to go down a little bit. Um, I think Dansby can take a lot better pitches than he does. I think sometimes he does try to be that guy. He does try to make a play. He does try to put us in position to have success. And I'm never going to tell him to not do that because that's your job. But the reality is, at some point, you just got to get on base. That's it. You just Moneyball, baby. You just got to get on base. Don't really care what happens other than that. So it really just that's what it'll come down to, man. Is really just consistent at bats. I want to see that kind of leap. The home runs are there. Like let's look at Dansby's career. Excuse me. Sorry. See, I love these when these aren't like episodes and we could just have late night conversations because we get to look stuff up. Okay, 2024 for Dansby Swanson. He had a 4.0 WAR, um, 534 at bats, 129 hits, 16 home runs, a 242 batting average, and 66 RBIs, 19 stolen bases. Slugging 390 could be a little bit better. OPS is a 98. OPS plus is a 98, pardon me, and he's 701 OPS. For Dansby Swanson, though, you look at his career. Let's just look at home runs, strictly home runs. After his third season, he had 14, 17, 10, 27, 25, 22, and then 16. So he had 22 home runs with the Chicago Cubs in 2023 in his first year and 16 this year. It was definitely a down year. I think a lot of people don't take into consideration he started the year with that knee injury. I definitely think that was lingering for a while. Now, obviously, a lot of people can say if you're hurt, don't step on the field. Otherwise, we have to judge you based off of what you're doing. But it is what it is. But I'm excited nonetheless. I think Dansby can be really productive for the Cubs next year. The question to me becomes: is Nico Hoerner going to be on the Chicago Cubs? You got nickel and dimes, Dansby Swanson and Nico Hoerner, both of them Gold Glove winners. I think breaking them up is definitely unfortunate. I believe James Triantos can duplicate what Nico does offensively, but defensively, I think he's a ways off from being an everyday second baseman compared to what we've seen from Nico over the last few years. So it definitely would be a really big difference for the Cubs. But from an offensive perspective, I think Triantos does have a little bit more pop in his bat. I definitely do think he can drive in more runs. He has a lot better, I guess, vision, you would say, at seeing the ball than Nico does. Nico's still great at it as well, but I definitely am a believer in Triantos. But that's the big question because that definitely does impact a guy like Dansby as well. If there's another rookie in that lineup, if Matt Shaw, James Triantos, and Owen Casey are in this lineup, it's three rookies. Moises Ballesteros is a conversation. Is Miguel Amaya going to continue to improve? I don't know. And I think that's when you start having a few issues. Is it could end up like the Cubs, with Brian and Baez and Wilson and Jorge, um, and Schwarbs. It could end up like that, or it could not. You know what I mean? Like it's really 50-50 on some of these guys panning out. Dylan also says, if the season started today and this was our roster, do you think we make the playoffs? Shaw at third. Um, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because if the season, let me to base this, if the season started today, Nico Hoerner isn't even going to be able to play until like maybe the beginning of the season. He's at an off season surgery. Um, but I get what you're saying, like with the roster, if everyone's healthy. I think for me, the Cubs have done enough to remain competitive, but I don't think they've done enough to necessarily be a playoff team right now. I think they've done enough to remain competitive. I think they're in the conversation, but being in the conversation and being a contender are two completely different things. You know what I mean? Like the Tigers were in the conversation, but no one thought they were a real contender. And obviously, you can overmeet expectations. The Red Sox are viewed as being in the conversation, but we saw how they played last year. Didn't meet expectations whatsoever. So you don't know. I think, like we kind of mentioned, like Aroki Sasaki definitely does make them a contender and does make them somebody that I believe can win this division. Um, but it's going to be hard. It's not going to come easy. It's going to be one of those things where, you just kind of got to ball out and you kind of got to see what these guys got. Like if Matt Shaw and Owen Casey go crazy, we're set. If they don't, and there's ups and downs throughout the season, and maybe they start hot and they end cold, it's scary to trust all those rookies at once. And I think that's one thing about Jed I will critique. I do think him waiting for the perfect moment to bring all these guys up does also make them inexperienced. And like at least PCA and Bush have experience now. But if you bring up Casey, Ballesteros, Alcantara, and Triantos and Shaw throughout the course of the next couple years, like, you know what I mean? Like we need that's why guys like Dansby are so important. You know what I mean? It's because you have a World Series champion on the roster to be able to talk to these young guys. It's tough. It's tough. But I appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We're going to go back live on TikTok. I don't really got much else to talk about. We'll keep you guys updated to everything Chicago Cubs and Chicago sports related. We have Green Bay, 12 p.m., January 5th, last game of the year. Can the Bears, please, for the love of God, win a football game? Until then, I'll check you guys out later. Peace.
Give them a shot to do what?